This is the Pathway Navigation Community of Practice virtual meeting held on June 13th, 2019. The following is an excerpt from that meeting entitled Technical Assistance and Tools to Support Change Efforts.
So the next agenda item is getting a little deeper into sort of technical assistance and some tools to support the change effort. The way we've been looking at this year is that the first 6 months was really a chance for you all to get organized, to build your teams, to, as you noted earlier, when I brought up, what we saw in the first quarterly report, organizing committees or reorganizing them, so sort of foundational work. And what we're kind of seeing now is looking towards the next 6 months is, okay, so now let's really get into the meat of this work, and we need some assistance. So one of the things we want to do is highlight some of the things that are available to you through this project, whether it's through us, WestEd, in collaboration with the region, or things that you can be doing sort of through a self-service model, if you will. So the first thing is the resource library, and I'm assuming not everyone on this webinar here today has seen the resource library. You've heard me mention it a couple times so far. So what I'm going to do is take you there. And this resource library is being updated on a regular basis. So the landing page, which is sort of the main URL when you get that, will have some featured resources. And right now, the featured resource is sort of the model that we all should know and love by now, as well as a recent article that was written about the initiative and the work that's been accomplished so far. So if you haven't seen either the article or the roadmap, I really encourage you to look at that. The article itself is really inspiring. It really talks about all the hard work that's gone on so far, all across the region. So it's a really good read. It is 8 pages, but I think it's a really wonderful quick read. You can click on resources, and that brings you then to the library, and it is organized in such a way that anything that's new will come up at the top. So you will see right here, somebody asked about the PowerPoint being available. It's the very first resource because it was the last one added. So anything new will appear at the top. So every time you come here, you should see something new appear at the top. And right now we have 142 resources in here for you, and our goal is not to get to 1,000 or even 500. What we're trying to do is be really pithy with what we share with you, and that it can be really targeted and addresses a need that you have, not just because it's a really interesting article, or we're really trying to support your change efforts, going back to sort of this notion of change management. Down the left side are topics, and next to each of the topics, you'll see the number of resources that are tagged with that particular topic. If you don't see the topic, it means there is no resource that addresses that topic, not yet anyway. So if there is something you're looking for that you're not finding, there is an email link up at the top, and that will go to Joy Lewis currently, who is on this webinar. You hear her voice periodically. And you can make a request. I'm looking for this, I'm not finding it, or a specific topic that you don't see. That helps us to then help you. So want to point out the email that's here. So you can filter by, let's say we were just talking about career exploration. So if we click on career exploration, it immediately filters everything. And there are now 8 resources out of the 142. And you can quickly scroll and see if any of these meet your needs. Well, maybe it might be that someone told you there's a really great career exploration resource that is research-based. So then you can go down, scroll a little further, and say, I just want anything that's related to research. And then it filters it down even more. Or maybe you change your mind, you take that filter off. Other ways you can search is by format. If you know it's a graphic, then you can just search by graphics. If the item is grayed out, it means that there is no resource that meets your criteria of career exploration and presentation. We don't want to return anything, that is blank, so we automatically don't allow you to check that if there's nothing there to find. And then you can also choose by project or committee. And this is related to the Pathway Navigation Committee, so you could always check this and then just find anything that's related to it. So that's the resource library. And I encourage you to explore it and give us feedback. Let us know, if there's anything that you need. And conversely, if you come across a resource, I know a number of you, visit other colleges, whether it's in California or outside of the state, you go to conferences. If you come across any resource that you think would be really helpful, again, use that email that is at the top and share it with us, and we'll make sure it gets properly vetted and put into the resource library. Another sort of technical assistance that's available to you is virtual consultations. Much like this webinar here is, it's a virtual community of practice. We're more than happy to schedule time with you, your team, a subset of your team, to talk through some problems of practice. Maybe you're thinking about a certain intake form or questions related to your intake, and you'd like to talk through them or have them vetted. We can certainly schedule something with you using Zoom like this. It's almost like being there. So we're available to provide assistance in that way, whether it's through WestEd or through the region. I would actually encourage you to reach out to one another and see, if you can't meet in person, is there a way to actually engage with one another virtually? So that's another form. We can also offer in-person consultations, and this would be probably more in-depth. We've had a couple of conversations with some colleges where there's real interest in bringing the team together and having a half day or even a full day, full on deep dive into a set of topics. And that is certainly something that we can assist with as well. Clearly that's something that's a little bit more limited in terms of, everybody's time, but that is also an option, especially if this really helps you continue to make progress or really launch something as part of your efforts. Oops, sorry. The next item is breakthroughs. And this is also available, and the link will be in the chat as well. You can go directly, or if going back to the resource library, you'll see there's a link to breakthroughs. So if you just go to the resource library, you can go to the resources or breakthroughs, or you can jump directly based on the link that we've shared. For those of you who don't know what the breakthroughs are, what we've been doing is collecting vignettes, snippets of information, nuggets of wisdom about what is happening across your campuses and within the region, as well as looking at what are other colleges doing in other parts of the country. And rather than just making that available through like a resource library where you'd have to search it, we wanted to put these together almost through a story or through what we're calling episodes. And episode 1 is really looking at pathway navigation improvement efforts, highlighting various colleges. And what we did is we took, for those of you who were at the COP back in February, you may remember we had a photographer there, we did some video, we had some audio, which was a little wonky at the time, but it worked actually. We got some good audio. And based on that, we were able to, we wrote what we call sort of an anchor paper focused on, what is happening around pathway navigation in the region. So on the left side here is a quick summary of what is happening and what is really driving all of this. And then linked to that, we have the 3 colleges that were highlighted at the Pathway Navigation launch event back in February, the first COP meeting. So for those of you who were there, you recognize Leroy and Charlie. You'll recognize Scott, and I believe Leroy, I don't know about Charlie, but I know Leroy's on, I know Scott is on, and then we also had Renee and Javier who are also on the webinar here today. So again, thank you to all of you for being guinea pigs for this. And what we did, so let's just take the Mesa one. If you click on that, it then takes you to the Mesa story. And it gives, again, a sort of a very quick synopsis of what is the MESA story related to the intake form, the MESA journey. And then down the left side are related resources. So there's a link to the webinar that we did after the COP. And then there are also links to other webinars that we did. There was one that we did with Northeastern. And then some of the resources related to that. And this is updated on a regular basis. So for example, what we're going to hear from Claudia today, what we might do is take the recording of just Claudia's piece today and add it to this page. So the idea is to keep coming back to this episode to see the story unfold. And that's why you've heard Claudia say several times today, we really want to hear from the colleges. So we invite all of you, if there's something you want to share, we are more than happy to organize a webinar, or if that's a bridge too far, to interview you and write a quick vignette about what it is you're doing. The idea is we want to get everyone's story captured and shared. So those are breakthroughs. And so I encourage you to sort of navigate through here. It's linked to the resource library, so any resources that we think are relevant to an episode will be highlighted. And we're currently working on episode 2, which will be focused on work-based learning, and we're going to try and create connections across those two. And then just rounding out the technical assistance that is available, there are tools. And in just a minute, I'm going to be highlighting 2 tools that are currently available in the resource library that focus on helping with at least part of the change management process. So again, if there are tools that you would like facilitation strategies or anything to help with the change management process, let us know, and we will either develop them for you, or there are certainly lots of tools out there that we can help make available. And then there's sort of the ubiquitous other. There's any number of ways that we can provide assistance. So again, reach out if you have questions or you have needs. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that. Joy, are there any questions related to this popping up in the chat?
No, we just have some accolades from others, from Scott and Erica, who said it was a great resource, and Grossmont's been using it, which is great to hear. So no questions.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. So what I'd like to do now is, before I share the couple of tools with you, is to have another moment of reflection. And for you to think about, just based on what I've just shared around technical assistance, some of your options, what are some of the things that you foresee needing help with, or what kind of technical assistance you think you might need in the coming 6 months? Recognizing that the summer is kind of I was going to call it fluffy time. There's likely to be less sort of campus-based activity, but are there things that we can do over the summer with you, and what does the fall maybe look like for you? So I'll give you a couple of minutes to jot down some notes or add any questions to the chat. The next thing, and then I will stop talking and let Claudia do some talking, is focused on communication. And again, if you remember earlier, change management was something that was brought up as a challenge or something that you all as campuses were grappling with, and we thought, well, let's start with communication, because that is clearly a change management strategy. And there are 2 tools that I'm going to share with you and kind of walk you through. And one is to really address sort of, who are your stakeholders and what do they need to know? So what kind of communication is going to be important for those stakeholders? And then also thinking about stakeholders are actually as collaborators in the process. And that can mean a lot of different things. So the second tool is looking at who your stakeholders are and how can they help you. So not only how do you communicate with them, but also, what are some things that you might need to provide them so that they can be part of the process. So the first tool, and again, these are available in the resource library, so those are also going to be linked for you in the chat. This one is all about communicating with the stakeholders. So let me bring it up. So the idea here is that, communication is really key. There are a lot of stakeholders involved in the change process. And so this worksheet, first of all, is to really first think about what is it in terms of engaging with stakeholders, what is your objective? What is it that you're really trying to address? And so the first thing to do here in this first box is to really think about what is it that you're communicating about? What is your goal here? What are the challenges you're trying to address? And we have a couple of examples here. So, one reason that you might want to be communicating is to secure buy-in. One of the things that we heard during a recent meeting, and that recent could be, in the last 6 weeks, let's say, is that faculty are not very aware of what is happening. And I'm not saying that's true across the board, but we heard that loud and clear from a couple of campuses. And there were some questions about how do you get faculty really engaged in this process? And so one of the questions then is, what do they need to know in order to feel like they can really buy into what is happening at the campuses? Another reason you might need a communication plan and really think about who your stakeholders are is to curtail rumors or to address misinformation. And these kind of go together. If you have a set of stakeholders, it could be community members, it could be business partners, any number of stakeholders. If there is no information, people will fill that gap, and oftentimes that's misinformation. Some other reasons for engaging with the stakeholders or needing to communicate is maybe a call to action. Maybe you have a set of stakeholders you really want involved, and somehow you really want them to get excited about participating. So it could be a call to action. It could also be because you're trying to manage expectations. Oftentimes you get people who are really excited and they really want to be involved, but they're going well beyond what it is either you can manage or what even the initiative is. So to also be able to sort of curtail or to manage what people are expecting of a particular process. It could be to develop or maintain momentum, to create some of that excitement if there isn't any. It could be to get collaboration going across, maybe similar types of stakeholders that have been working in silos. Maybe it's about building that kind of sharing. So it's really important to be really clear on what it is that you're wanting to communicate or what challenge you're trying to address through a communication strategy. And then the rest of the worksheet is actually, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's pretty straightforward in that, you would identify what challenge or what your objective is. So let's say it's to generate excitement or to build the buy-in. What you'll want to do is identify who all are the stakeholders that you want to bring into the fold. And it's not everybody all the time. Sometimes it's just one particular group, like I mentioned, faculty, or it could be the deans, or it could be the IT staff. It all depends on what it is you're trying to get across. And then for that stakeholder, what is the message? What is the information they need in order for them to help you address your challenge or your objective? And what's going to be the method? Sometimes it's important to just send a blast email. That's the easiest way and it's the most effective way, and it's going to get things done. Other times it may be an in-person interaction, because it's that important that whoever it is or whatever that stakeholder group is, it needs that personal touch. So here it's going to be really important to think about, it's not just about blurting out the information and using the easiest way possible, but really thinking about what is going to be really important to get the stakeholder engaged. And then the other thing to think about, is it one and done? Or is it a frequent communication? So for example, if you're trying to maintain momentum, having one communication about what you're doing on campus and then never again you're not going to get momentum. So if it's really about momentum, thinking about what's the frequency and what level of information. If it's more frequent, then it's less information. If it's less frequent, it's probably more information. And then being really clear on who will be taking this on. Naming names and being sure that that person has the bandwidth to really follow up on what it is that you say you're going to do. And then there's space to write notes and identify next steps and really move forward with this. So this tool is really about communicating, and it's more one way. It's, who your stakeholders are, and you're trying to really make sure that they're part of the universe of the work, and that they have the information they need to really understand what is happening. And then the second tool is this one. And you might ask yourself, well, what's the difference between sort of this one and the previous one? As I mentioned, the previous one is really one way, where you've identified your stakeholders and you're getting them information so that they're part of the overall process. This one is more where you want your stakeholders involved in some way. And involved doesn't mean that they come to all your meetings, that they're in the weeds. In some cases, it might be your campus president, and you want to make sure that your campus president has the information he or she needs, that when they are at a luncheon or at a meeting or walking down the hall and somebody asks them a question, they have enough information to answer that question. So this particular worksheet is to think about your stakeholders and how you might actually fit them into your process. So this one it's similar again, but it's just a little different. The idea is that you identify who your stakeholders are, and really asking yourself the question, who are the individuals and what roles do they have, and that need to know something about this particular initiative or the work that we're doing. And what is their role, not literally like they're a president or a dean or faculty, but what is their role in this work? So for example, a president or a dean might be more of a, sort of at a leadership level, really sort of being able to speak to the initiative, but not being engaged in sort of the weeds, if you will. The others you may actually want them in the fold and actively engaged and be part of your team. One of the things I want to highlight is, don't forget yourself. You're actually also a stakeholder, whether you're the lead of your campus team or you're a member of your campus team or you're involved somehow with the team but not directly on the team. Really think about yourself and what you feel like you need in terms of information, or for you to be actively and well prepared to be engaged. So that's one thing we really want to include for you to think about. So based on that role, so it could be team member, or me. And then what is it that you need to know, or what that particular stakeholder needs to know in order to be engaged or supportive of the work? Again, going back to my example of a campus president, he or she doesn't need to know a lot, but enough to be able to answer a question about where things are for your campus, or where things are, regionally, and that sort of thing. And what is it that you want them to be able to do? So it's not just about them knowing something, but you're actually thinking about what you want them to do. And in this case, again, the president, they're an advocate for the work. That's the word I was looking for earlier. And what do they need in order to be able to do that? And again, going back to the president idea, example, maybe they need a cheat sheet, 3 bullets that they can speak to and feel comfortable speaking to. So then in this last column, you would identify what it is you would do to follow up to make sure that stakeholder is comfortable taking that role as that stakeholder. And in this particular worksheet, we've added an example, and I encourage you to delete that if it doesn't make sense, or to keep it in. But hopefully it makes sense how these two actually kind of work together, but they really do serve different purposes in helping you to engage with your stakeholders.